Good morning and welcome to Global Engage. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Zainab Usman, who is a senior fellow and inaugural director of the Africa program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. She's based in Washington, D.C. Zainab, welcome.
Thank you.
Um, as I was saying to you before, like the point of this is to really illuminate careers in international development and international affairs for our students who are very interested in, global careers. And I'm wondering if we could just start with very simply, like, what was your career path? How did you get to the place that you are today?
Well, my career path was in many ways unconventional, I would say. Although when you talk to a lot of people in this field, in the field of um, public policy, international development, foreign policy, I guess many people would also say that they had unconventional paths.
Right.
Um, I moved to DC over 9 years ago, around
Okay.
about 9 years ago, I would say, in 2016, to work with the World Bank as part of the Young Professionals Program, which is um, a, an early career. It's not an entry level position, but it's an early career program for training people to occupy senior leadership positions at the bank.
So
Uh,
what is it called again?
the Young Professionals Program.
And is it like 5 to 8 years of
It's five.
or more?
It's a 5-year program,
Oh, wow.
and typically, people who join the program are in their late 20s or early 30s. I moved to DC, joined the World Bank from academia. I was completing my doctorate in the UK in a multidisciplinary department, international development, although my concentration was economics and a bit of political science. Yeah, so I worked for the World Bank for a couple of years and then joined the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace as the founding director of the Africa program in February 2021. And this is what I've been doing since then.
Yeah, I have so many questions for you. Let me start with, well, can we rewind a little bit further and ask what was your concentration in undergrad and college, and what sparked an interest for you to focus on both the region that you focus on and the issue areas that you focus on?
Sure. Um, so I made a bit of a pivot, I would say. My undergrad was in international relations and French. So I allegedly claim to speak a bit of French. I just don't practice enough. And I have
When you were doing that degree, what did you think you were going to do as a career?
um when I was doing that degree, I thought I was gonna do one of two things, or I hoped I was gonna do one of
Right,
two
hope.
things. I thought I was either going to be in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of my country. So I was born in Nigeria and I did my undergraduate degree there. Um, and then I also aspired to work in international development, which is what I ended up doing. Um, yeah, so I have to say I'm quite grateful I was able
Yeah,
to achieve what I had hoped to achieve when I
right?
was much, much younger. So it was really international relations that I started out with.
Yeah.
Um, I completed that degree in 2008 and uh, worked with a regional economic community, a regional organization, ECOWAS, in
Mhm.
West Africa, the Economic Community of West African States. And then I actually worked very, very briefly with the private sector for a couple of months before I left for the UK for my graduate degree. And it was in my graduate degree that I started to shift towards economics.
Mhm.
So I did international development again for my master's, but more focused on international political economy. And then for my PhD, which I started in 2012, I made more of that transition towards economics.
And thank you. That's so helpful. Just a short question. Are either of your parents in like the diplomatic sector?
No,
No, okay.
yeah, no
So
family
if you think
member.
of your kind of earliest interest in this, why were you interested in this?
Um, why was I interested in this? A couple of reasons. Some are, I have to say, superficial, and some were, I would say, substantial reasons. So let me start with the superficial reasons. I mean, I wanted to see the world, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Coming from not just Nigeria, northern Nigeria, which Nigeria has a lot of regional inequalities, as with many large countries. The north is a little bit more conservative. Of course, people can travel, but oftentimes people kind of stay where they are, where they've been born and raised. I just wanted to see the world and do a lot more. That was one of the reasons why I chose that path. But there are also things that I cared about. In particular, I really cared about the development experiences of countries that are rich in natural resources, hydrocarbons, oil and gas, which is the case in Nigeria, but also minerals, and
Right.
why these countries, despite the seemingly abundant wealth, tend to struggle when it comes to their development prospects. That is really what I ended up focusing on for my doctorate, published papers, wrote a book, and I'm still working in that space, by the
Yeah.
way,
Wait, Zainab,
particularly.
can you say the name of the book? Because I think what you just said will be of interest to many people who are listening.
Sure, sure. So the title of my book is Economic Diversification in Nigeria, The Politics of Building a Post-Oil Economy. Um, And in many respects, I'm still doing some of that work with, particularly with respect to the uh, prospect of a global energy transition and the opportunities and the challenges for resource-rich countries around the world, countries that have hydrocarbons. How are they going to diversify their economies and reduce their dependence on fossil fuels that the world will have to transition from? And
Mhm.
countries that are rich in critical minerals, how will they ensure that they benefit from the new scramble, global scramble for these commodities?
That
So
we
that
see
really
playing out right now, I think
is
with
playing
kind
out
of,
right now.
yeah.
So if you ask me, that truly is my passion. It's what I've been working on for
Yeah.
years. Um,
So the
it's
question I will ask you, because I think what you
yeah.
just said is, like I said, is going to be, I think a lot of kids will say, or students will say, yes, that. Like what, how do you suggest they would begin if this is something that they are interested in terms of gaining professional experience?
Um, I would say so. A couple of things. First is I think if there are there are different ways to gain experience
Yeah.
on a particular issue. I mean, sometimes you already know the space, the thematic area that you want to concentrate in,
Mhm.
and you want to focus on. Like in my case, it was always development in resource-rich countries around the world, particularly in Africa. For some other people, it might be something else. It might be the role of technology in society. It might be the role of youth or changing
Right.
demographics, etc. So if you do find a specific issue area that you care about, find ways to ensure that you're building expertise in that area. Another approach would be, I also work increasingly with a lot of young people, interns, college graduates, etc. Sometimes people just have the energy and the determination, but they've not quite figured out uh, what specific thematic area or issue to focus
Yeah,
on.
I think that would be a lot of our
A
students.
lot of people, yeah. In that case, it helps to kind of try different things,
Right.
particularly
Mhm.
in your early 20s. That's the time for you to experiment. I would say though, don't overdo it. Don't do more than three things, because otherwise, you end up suddenly you are in your 30s and you're still trying to figure things out. And that's okay, but it also helps to, at a certain point in time, to start to narrow down your key areas of interest and to start to build expertise. So it helps to do different things, maybe three, I would say no more than three.
Yeah.
Try out different things. A third and final thing I want to mention is along the way, whether you already know where you're headed in terms of subject matter expertise or whether you're still trying to figure that out, is it's also not a bad thing to do to take roles that may not at first glance seem to directly relate to what you're trying to achieve,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes there's value in just like getting a job for the sake of having a job,
Mhm.
right?
And being
And
excellent at that job.
being excellent at
Yeah,
that job because especially in your early 20s, what really matters is for you to build certain skills and
that's right. I
competencies,
agree with that.
and then gradually you build expertise. So again, I hire people in my role right now, fresh out of college, and for the most part, I'm not looking to hire a 20-year-old expert. I'm looking to hire, a 22-year-old, whatever, who can do data analysis, who can do a literature review, they can read stuff, they
Yeah.
can summarize things, they are creative, they are hardworking, they can work with colleagues. Those are the skills and competencies that I'm looking for. And as they work closer with me and other experts, then they also start to build up expertise over time.
Yeah, that is all great advice. And I like the way that you distilled the competencies that you're looking to get in your first job because they're going to translate across whichever sector you go to. Can you tell me a little bit? So Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
Yeah.
What is the goal of it, and what is a day like a day in the life? If you take a snapshot of today after you and I are done speaking, like what does your day look like?
Um, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace is a foreign policy think tank. We are based in DC, and we're part of the broader kind of family of Carnegie entities and organizations, the libraries. There's a Carnegie Corporation in New York that provides grants and supports fellows in the
Mhm.
social sciences and also in the hard sciences. And then there are other Carnegie entities. Like there's a Carnegie Mellon University. Um, so we are a think tank established by Andrew Carnegie in 1910 to address issues related to war and peace, specifically to foster international cooperation to prevent global war. The endowment is in our name. In that case, it's a little bit misleading. We do have an endowment, but we don't give grants. It's for our own use. The peace in our name is sometimes a little bit misleading because we're not a peace building entity.
Mhm.
So peace is within the context of fostering international cooperation to achieve long-lasting global peace and avoid war. So, a few things about our name, but in terms of the work that we do, it's a whole range of things. I mean, at the core of it, there's an emphasis on US foreign policy around the world, in different regions of the world, in my case, in Africa.
Mhm.
There's also an element of it that looks at the foreign policies of other key global uh, centers, key global powers, as they relate also to the United States and just to kind of broader issues of international cooperation. Now, with respect to the Africa program, our work sits at the intersection of foreign policy and economic development as it relates to Africa. I would say that the niche we occupy is that we use an economic development lens to address foreign policy issues as they relate to Africa. Um, because when it comes to Africa, I think in the US, in DC in particular, for the longest time, the emphasis has been on like counterterrorism, conflict, security, humanitarian issues, sometimes development assistance. but with limited emphasis on just the continent's socio-economic development, demographic changes, energy policy, natural resources, as I mentioned to you, digital technologies, and then the role of Africa in the global multilateral system. So those are the areas that we've chosen to focus on.
If
Um,
you're a student who's an undergrad or a grad and you like wanted to get like what are there opportunities that students can take advantage of? You kind of talked about what, what an entry level job you should look for,
yeah.
and what keys for success in the field in a sense. Are there things that are good, first steps that you would encourage students to look more into?
Good first steps would be looking out for like entry level programs that many think tanks tend to have. Carnegie has a junior fellows program in which we actually target students who are just about to complete their studies in college. So generally, like college graduates within
Yeah.
the first year of their graduation to join us. It used to be called an internship. Now it's a little bit more elaborate. It's a fellowship. So that would be something to target. We also occasionally advertise research assistant, research analyst roles,
Yes.
either in the Africa program or even other programs at Carnegie. Those are also typically, to a large extent, entry-level roles.
Right.
It does help for people to have if you have some internship
Yeah.
experience or some experience doing like activities in college, those help. But I would say very importantly for a lot of those roles, at least what I'm looking for is the skills and the competencies, data analysis, the ability to just do a literature review, read and synthesize material, being able to attend high level meetings, conduct yourself with, maturity, work with other colleagues, be open to learning. Yeah, those would be, I think, the key
Thank you.
competencies.
That's just hugely helpful. Um, I have one kind of last, maybe big question in a sense. Like we're having this conversation in a time in which the entire international development sector and global development sector has kind of been upended by the actions of the early actions of the Trump administration vis-a-vis the U.S. Agency for International Development. And I guess I'm asking you, as you look to the future, both, you have a very, I guess not US centric view, so it's helpful to hear how you look at having worked at the World Bank, et cetera, the whole globe, and how this changes or impacts the sector in the short term and medium term. And I wonder if you would just give us a sense of that.
Um, what you mentioned about the international development ecosystem being disrupted is absolutely correct. The dismantling of USAID is an important accelerant of a long-running trend. So it's not the catalyst, it's an accelerant in the sense that um, already some of the major OECD DAC, I'm getting a little technical here, there's some of the major donors, providers of foreign aid, particularly in Europe, had been cutting their development assistance. They had been reallocating their development assistance away from like poor countries and issues of global poverty to focus more inwards. Um, and they had been reorganizing development programs too, to be more focused on like foreign policy priorities.
Was
Now
this in response to their own citizenry kind of wanting to have wanting that?
a bit of that. So a response to domestic political priorities and considerations. Citizens in some donor countries, I don't want to generalize to say it's all, but like, the UK, a few others, they are just not as supportive of foreign aid being sent to faraway lands. as they used to be. And, if you're in a democracy, you do have to respond to what your citizens are saying. There are also economic considerations. Europe, maybe not the US. I don't think what's going on in the US is quite economic, like the drivers are not necessarily economic in Europe. Europe, the EU zone has been in economic stagnation really since the global financial crisis. Growth rates of, on average, less than 2% per annum. So there are some economic considerations there. India surpassed the UK to become the fifth largest economy in the world in 2023, and is likely to soon surpass Germany to become the world's fourth largest economy. Um, that has implications in terms of the resources that countries are willing to devote to matters of global poverty in faraway lands, in addition to like so many other considerations and priorities. So, I mean, coming back to your question, then I do think there's a major disruption that is going on. I mean, a lot of NGOs now are going to close. Some are closing because if they are very reliant on foreign aid for their operations, for their projects. When the UK closed DFID, the Department for International Development, in 2020 and kind of completely overhauled its foreign aid apparatus, that had knock-on effects on NGOs and programs that were very much reliant on this assistance. So I think the Netherlands too just issued a new guidance
Oh,
on
really?
how, yeah, this is just a few days ago, on how it's completely overhauling its approach to foreign aid, again, making drastic cuts and reductions. I think this is going to be a trend that accelerates and continues. What it means is that, in my view, I did a degree in international development, although I had a specific concentration on, natural resources, etc. Honestly, I would encourage people who especially want to do a graduate degree to maybe not focus so much on some of the interdisciplinary kind of programs. If you're interested in economics, go to economics. If you want to do public policy, actually, public policy is still one of the few interdisciplinary programs that I would recommend, because public policy will always be important. If you want to do IR, go do IR. Like, go to a specific discipline where you have a home, so that if things become very uncertain, because we're in a very uncertain environment, you do have a disciplinary home. The second thing I would mention, by way of thinking tangibly about how you build a career, is the world, the era of NGOs doing development. I think if it's not ending, it's completely changing, and it's going to change in very unrecognizable ways. But you can still do work that is in the public interest, that helps advance objectives of development. You just might have to do that in different kinds of organizations. So increasingly now there are consultancies,
Mhm.
there are like geopolitical risk advisory firms where you can do data analysis, you can provide advisory services to governments in low and middle income countries. And then there are also think tanks, obviously think tanks here in the US, in Europe, but even in a lot of African and Asian countries, there are local think tanks that are coming up. Increasingly, they are quite capable, they have experts, but they could also do with more experts
Yeah.
joining. So you might have to think of organizations beyond the traditional development NGO.
That is so helpful. I'm so grateful for your time and your advice. I think you have a lot of good advice to impart to young people, to our students as they kind of consider their next steps. And I know I will be asking you if you need an intern when we get offline. So thank you, Zainab. Please come to Chicago, come visit us.
Absolutely.
If you're ever around, we'd love to have you anytime.
Will do. Thank
All right.
you.
Have a good day. Bye.